This past month was like a roller coaster ride, and I know that I've used that term before, but the truth is it was pretty rough. I'm up 5,000 one day and I'm down 5,000 another. Towards the end of the month, I hit an all-time high in the account of $480,000, and right after that, a big crash once again. It's been really noisy in the markets lately, no arguing about that. Now, if you remember a few months ago, I had built up that emergency fund, $11,000, half in growth, half in cover calls, and I just wanted to see how they behaved side by side. Is this income thing really a thing? Drip was set on. I didn't add any more money to this, and I've been watching it for the last several months now, and I've got some observations that I want to share with you guys. This is really important stuff for those of you that are interested in getting into cover calls. So I'm going to show you where the portfolio sits. I'm going to show you what this experiment is actually doing right now and how total returns plays into this and what I am going to be doing with these cover calls moving forward. My name's Darren. I started investing really late and I'm building this in a very public setting so Canadians who started later in life can actually see how this really works. Let's get into it. Last month, we're sitting at $460,000, and at the end of February, an all-time high of $480,000, closing in on that target that I've set for our retirement. Now, that didn't happen in a straight line, not at all. It was a roller coaster. 5,000 up, 5,000 down throughout that month. You gotta have confidence in the markets when you see swings like that. Now, contributions changed. I increased the RRSP spousal contributions as I did with the TFSA. But before we get into that, let's talk about that $11,000 experiment in my emergency fund. So an emergency fund should definitely not be managed like this, but I wanted to run this experiment. So we put $11,000 into a TFSA and I split it evenly between growth with VFV and XEQT, and 50% of it went into cover calls with HYLD, HHIS, and USCL. Once I hit that $11,000 target, we turned the drip on and we just left it. Now, my understanding of these cover calls is that I'm going to get paid. I'm going to see the income. Now, of course, total returns absolutely matter in the grand scheme of things, no matter whether you're in cover calls or growth or however you want to define yourself as an investor, because let's face it, these are just, very broad labels. But with income-oriented investing, I would fully expect to see a lot of money coming into that account. Now, as the end of February, the account sits at 11,002 cents. That's right, I said 2 cents on top of 11,000, and it's been a few months since I maxed that account out. So where's this income that I keep hearing about? Yes, total returns absolutely matters. So let's break this down and look at each part of the account, and we'll see what's performing well and what's not, and help you guys make a decision as to whether or not something like this would work. So I've gone into passive so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So back in July is when I started contributing to this emergency fund. And the idea here was we had to use a bunch of this money, so I needed to build it back up. But I wanted to see if I invested it, what the returns would look like. And that's total returns. So we started off adding small amounts, and then eventually it was pretty aggressive till we maxed the thing out. So in December, we added the last $380 to that account, and I left it at that. At that time, it was $11,000. So since then, we had January and February and then a part of December to see performance. Now, again, I get it. This is a very small window for me to measure, sort of overall performance, but I'm looking at total returns here. With all of that money in there, I would fully expect to see that grow. And maybe my interpretation of this income idea is a little bit wrong, where the income coming into the account doesn't really reflect the actual principle that I put in. And maybe that's where I'm going wrong. Maybe you guys can tell me by leaving it in the comments here. Now, I've been watching this over the last little while. I'll check in and see how it's doing. And at one point, the account was up about $500, so $11,500. And then it's steadily bounced around. Now, that's reflective of the markets. I totally get that. But as far as total returns go, it really hasn't given me the motivation that I hoped it would. I was really hoping to see a lot of returns. So we'll just go back. You can see each month. So it breaks it down by the income that's being generated. In the first month, we made $15, made $24, By October, we made 56, then 68, 81, 107, and then in February, we made $87. Now, keep in mind, those are the covered calls that are in this account, because the other portions are obviously the growth funds, which is VFV and XEQT. And of course, they only pay out quarterly, so we're not going to see that reflected here. But based on these numbers, I would say I'm getting some steady income as far as the distributions that are being paid to me. But I don't see any growth. And a lot of people that use income funds are saying that when that income comes in, the best way to do it, especially if you're not needing the money, is obviously to reinvest it. Well, I have been doing that, and this account is very flat. In fact, I would suggest that if there's any big market swings, it might actually, the principal might drop a little bit. This is what each asset allocation within the account looks like. Like I said, I set it for 50% growth, so that's 25% XEQT, 25% VFV, and then I split HHIS, USCL, and HYLD up. And what I've noticed is you can see that on its own, XEQT is growing. We can see that because the allocation is 25%, but it's up to 27%. VFV 25, just a little bit higher at 0.5. But HHIS, as far as share price goes, is down 22.3. And what I think is important here is this is total returns. The distributions are on drip. This account, I don't even touch it. There's no money going into it. So the distributions from HHIS are getting reinvested back into itself, and yet we're still down. Now, it could be that this is just a period in the market where it's not performing well. USCL is just under the 15% allocation, and the same with HYLD. Again, those distributions have been reinvested back into it. So definitely something to think about if these are the types of funds that you want to use in your own portfolio. And nobody can argue with the fact that, there is a bit of a psychological game when that money is distributed to you. It makes you feel good, right? When you see the income coming into your account. And so if it motivates you to then invest, and a key point here is investing isn't just what you put it in, it's how much can you actually put away each year. If you listen to The Wealthy Barber, which I have been listening to a lot recently, the podcast he's doing, it's pretty new. If you've read his book, great influence as far as getting people started. And it's very simple. He suggests that, you at least put away 10% of your gross income every year. And of course, that would grow over time depending on where you are in age. I know a lot of my audience were a little bit older, so obviously if you didn't start young like I didn't, then you have to increase those contributions to reach your targets whenever those might be. So one would conclude that if total returns evens things out, this experiment should ideally show that. But like I said, the math is showing something completely different than that, pretty flat. And I do acknowledge, like I said, that we are in a pretty volatile part of the markets right now. So I guess we'll just have to sit back and see where this is going. Now, this window is pretty narrow. I totally get that. It's not a complete full cycle. It's not a full year. It's not a longer period of time. But I definitely thought that I would see this grow a little bit faster, which is demonstrating that this is definitely not the way to deal with your emergency fund. It should be much more liquid and cash. And like I said to you, I don't really feel like I'm getting paid, but who knows, maybe over time this will work itself out. Now, when it comes to covered calls, here's something that's been on my mind for quite a long time now. With a covered call ETF, you don't always get a real clean breakdown of where the distributions are coming from. Some companies report them, some don't. They might show you that you get 80% of return of capital versus other ones that don't display it at all on their website. So when you see that kind of stuff, it's not really obvious how much of this is actually the premium from the covered call. Because remember, a covered call is that you will purchase the right to buy this share at a certain price in the future. And those create the distributions or the income that you see, but there's really no way to measure that. So you don't really know, am I getting my own money back or I'm getting the distributions? Now, I'm most certainly not saying that income isn't real, because these covered calls do generate some money that gets distributed to you. But the way I see it right now, that $500 gross sleeve, even with drip on, reminds me of something important, that you need to understand what you own. So in my eyes, if I can't sort of figure out or isolate the income or how much impact that might have on my portfolio, then I really need to be careful about the exposure that I have within my portfolio. You have to exercise some discipline. Covered calls represent about 10% of the entire portfolio, which sits just under $50,000. Now, that particular sleeve within my portfolio is creating quite a drag within there, but who knows, that could smooth itself out over time. So we just need to make sure that we sort of reduce the exposure so that we don't have a large portion of our portfolio in these types of things, because the income that they generate, while might be productive to someone who needs that income, can create quite a drag on a portfolio. Now, I'm going to keep watching it. We'll see how it behaves. We're not getting rid of them, so stay tuned. Let's talk about what you can actually control when it comes to investing, because there's plenty of things that you can't. The one thing that is most important is your contributions. You absolutely can control that, but it takes a little bit of effort. Last year, we were contributing $1,100 to the TFSA and $335 to the spousal RRSP. The $1,100 was every 2 weeks, and the $335 was every single week. This year, I've increased that. We're now doing $1,200 every 2 weeks and $350 every single week to the spousal RRSP. The message here is, when you get a raise or you get some extra money from somewhere, pay yourself first, because it will pay off in dividends. Literally, I know that sounds silly, but over time, that money is going to grow for you. It's way better than going and spending on something that may not make you happy. Ask yourself this. Look around your house. Are there things that you go by in your house or that you have in your house all the time that you never use? Why did you buy them in the first place? Well, maybe you actually felt good about those things that you bought. But imagine if you didn't buy it and it didn't just sit around, and instead you took that money and invested it. That money is going to grow for you over time. That is such a key concept. So when it comes to investing, guys, you gotta start somewhere. Whatever that looks like for you, start small. Even if you're feeling uncomfortable, start off with that $25 or $100 or whatever that looks like for you. Now, if you're the older crowd like me, which I know a lot of you in the audience are, then obviously these numbers need to be slightly higher. That's why you're seeing me be a bit more aggressive. But if you're younger, you got a bit more time. Time is your best friend. That's the one thing that I can't control anymore, is time. So I have to increase the contributions that I have. And if you think about it, that's how this portfolio grew from about $220,000 to $480,000 in just under 3 years. It wasn't because of one particular ETF, and it most certainly wasn't because of one singular strategy. It was because I steadily increased the amounts that I contributed to the accounts over time. So tax strategy plays an equal role, and we're working on our taxes right now using Wealthsimple's tax program. You can use any of them, whether it be two-row tax from Costco or wherever you can find it, or you can pay somebody to do it, but your taxes can really help your portfolio grow. So this year we made a little bit more money than we made last year. And if you don't know, Canada has a progressive tax system. So not every dollar that you earn ends up in the highest tax bracket. It is only the portion of money that is above that level. So for instance, at the lowest tax bracket, around $56,000, everything above that gets taxed in the next tax bracket, and so on and so forth. So it's important to utilize these registered accounts to help reduce that, because remember, RRSPs are meant to defer tax. They don't make them go away. So if I'm got, say, $20,000 in the next tax bracket, can I put away enough money to offset that and then pay that later when I retire and pull that money out? And in that case, you would then be paying hopefully at a lower tax rate. That's the benefit of the registered plan. And of course, when you get your tax return, the big question becomes, what do you do with that money? Because if you go off and you spend it on something else, then I think you're really, inhibiting your ability to make your money grow. So year after year, we've been taking that money and contributing it right back into the RRSP. And I'm happy to say, as I'm doing my taxes right now, that this year we'll have more in our tax return than we did last year. And that snowball should continue until we max out the room in our RRSP. So quick snapshot snapshot of what happened in the month of February. We contributed $5,035 to the account. Now that is a little bit higher than it has been in the past, and the reason for that was because of the RRSP. The deadline is March the 2nd, and you want to make sure that you get those contributions in to take care of the tax advantages prior to that date. And that's what we've been up to, is trying to reduce some of that income to defer that off, as I said, to the following retirement years when we will hopefully pay less tax on it. So quite a bit of contributions in this month. The dividends that we received over the last month was $733. Let's talk about one other change that I made in the portfolio. In the last year, in 2025, I had transferred some money over to Questrade to take advantage of a offering they had for 3% cash back. And I had to admit, I wasn't overly happy with Questrade's service or their platform in comparison to Wealthsimple. Now, that's not to say that they're terrible or anything. I didn't like some of the things. For instance, they talked about having fractional shares, but unfortunately, it's only on the US side. So I made the decision because Wealthsimple was offering another match, and I ultimately went ahead and I moved all our money over. Now, one of the big things that came as a result of this was that I became a generations client with Wealthsimple, and we've effectively moved almost everything over to Wealthsimple at this point. We're now using their credit card because we get 2% cash back on it. We're using the checking accounts, the RESP, as well as we have the majority of our accounts. We do have a couple things left over at Questrade, and it doesn't mean that I won't be using it in the future, but I really saw an opportunity to get advantages. One of them is the taxes, because as you know, right now it's tax time, and the generation clients get access to a tax planner. I'm using their software to do my taxes. I've done it that way for the last several years, and as a result, I am actually going to take advantage of the generation side of things and have an appointment with one of their tax specialists and see how that goes. And then I'll report back to you guys what my experience was like. For the most part, everything I've done with Wealthsimple has been pretty good. Not to say that everything's perfect, but it's definitely something that we're going to be taking advantage of. So one other thing that I did moving into 2026 is I'm really leaning into the all-in-ones. I did a recent video talking about XEQT versus VEQT. As I learn, I share with you guys, and I always love sharing because I get so many feedback questions, and that helps me learn more. So this year, I'm going to lean more into the all-in-ones, and in particular in the accounts that I'm not contributing a lot of money to. So I've increased the allocation into XEQT up to about 22%, and that's actually in the spousal. So we are adding money there. And the reason for that is I do eventually want to take advantage of Wealthsimple's offering of Norbert Gambit. I know it's in the beta testing right now. I've seen some people commenting on it. I can't wait till it comes around. I've used Norbert Gambit in the past with Questrade and found it very useful. You are saving a little bit of money when it comes to currency conversion. And the idea here is I've got our portfolio split in Canadian and US funds, and obviously that gives us a hedge with the dollar. Right now, Canada's performing fairly well in the markets, but by the time we need this money, you never know, the US dollar might be a bit stronger. So we're leaning into a bit more diversification by that all-in-one because I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to rebalance. I don't have to do anything. I literally buy the shares and that money goes to work for me right away. Now, I've talked a lot about taxes in this video, and it is that time of the month when you're working on your taxes. And if you want to see some mistakes that people make and the things you can learn from it, you should watch this video right here.